Hello, I'm Chris from Discount Aquarium Fish and Reef in beautiful downtown Tempe, Arizona. Today we're going to talk a little bit about drilling aquariums, give you everything you need to know, talk about some tips of the trade, get you off on the right track. First off, talking about whether a tank is tempered or not tempered is very important. It sometimes can be a challenge to find this out, but we're going to give you a few pointers. First off, most of your rim tanks are going to be made by Tetra, Aquariums, or Marineland. You can go to Google and you can do a search and basically just ask Marineland tanks tempered or whatever brand. Usually you can find some information either directly from the manufacturer or online about which models are tempered, which models are not tempered, which models have tempered bottoms but not tempered other panels, and you can hear it straight on the model that you have. Other than that, we have found that most of your smaller tanks are not tempered. Very rarely that a 10-gallon is tempered, 20 long, 40 breeder, 20 regular. Those you're pretty sure are not tempered bottom or back. When you get into the middle-sized tanks, it gets a little more tricky. The 55 gallons and the 75 gallons and the 90 gallons are very often tempered and not drillable. That's on the back and on the bottom. So be very careful with those to find out one way or another for sure before you start drilling. The tanks that are older and kind of oddballs that are similar to the 75 and 55 are the 50 gallon and the 80 gallon. Those often have brown rims. Sometimes they're not center brace supported because they have very thick glass. Sometimes they are. Usually they'll have a glass center brace rather than a plastic on the 80. 55s can have the plastic, or 50s can have the plastic center brace. The 50s and the 80s are very often not tempered. So sometimes you can find a 50 if you really want a 55 that's drillable, and there's very similar tank, just a slight bit shorter, making up for the 5-gallon loss. Once you get over 90 gallons, when you get into the 125s, the 240s, a lot of those different sizes, 210s, those tanks are almost always drillable on both the back and the bottom. There are also some tips you can find online about ways to look through polarized glasses, into your cell phone inside the tank, things like that, and they claim to be able to tell whether it's tempered or not. Can be kind of iffy and difficult, but you can look into that. Sometimes the manufacturer will tell you with a sticker on the bottom, but even that can be a little confusing. Sometimes that sticker will say, tempered glass, do not drill. You really have no way of knowing whether that's all the panels or just the bottom where the sticker is. So those are confusing, really don't help that much. There's other ones that help a lot. They say all panels are tempered, in which case you know they're all tempered, I can't do any drilling. Also, some of them will say tempered bottom, do not drill. Well, generally in that case, you're pretty sure it's just the bottom and you can drill the back. So I hope that gives you some pointers on trying to figure out if this thing's tempered or not. If you try and drill a tempered tank, tempering is a heat process that makes glass stronger. That's why some tanks are only tempered on the bottom, because bottom has most pressure. In order to save money and not use thicker glass than they would need to on the bottom, they go ahead and temper it. If you drill into a tempered tank, you'll be going along fine, and all of a sudden you'll hear a gunshot very loud, and you'll have little square pieces of glass all over the place. So you definitely want to try and avoid that. That said, your next step is you need to locate a glass drill bit. They look like this. They're carbide tipped, which helps them cut through the glass. And one thing to know, these are very expensive and can be hard to find locally. If you do find them, they can be up to $50, which is an awful lot to pay for a glass drill bit. I don't like to encourage people to shop online. It's better to shop at your small businesses, especially when it comes to fish stores. But in this case, you're better off going to eBay online. You can purchase glass drill bits just by searching. Sometimes they're as low as $5. Purchasing the correct size drill bit for the bulkheads you're going to be put in is also something that you need to make sure to do right. This is a 3/4 inch Schedule 40 bulkhead. One of the most common that people are using for returns to return water back to a tank. 1 inch they generally use for the drains if they're using Schedule 40. A 3/4 inch Schedule 40 takes an 1.5 inch hole, not a 3/4 inch hole. Schedule 40. If you're using Schedule 80s, which are the larger gray bulkheads, which are much thicker plastic, they take a much larger hole. For instance, this is a Schedule 80 3/4 inch. You can see much different size than the Schedule 40. What you'll want to do is just go online, type in bulkhead hole sizes. There's all kinds of charts and things that will tell you the right size hole for drilling for a Schedule 40 or a Schedule 80 of any size bulkhead. So that takes care of that. Treatment of your bits. These are a precision instrument. You do not want to lay this down hard on its side. You don't want these to get banged around in your toolbox. Even if you drop them on concrete, the shafts can become bent. And if they're bent at all, this drill bit is not going to be useful. You always have to check before drilling to make sure that you have a bit that's spinning evenly, symmetrically. That way you know it's not wobbling from a bent shaft and you're going to have problems with that. Also, put the bit down all the way into the drill. That way you have less problems if there is some slight imperfection, but either way, you want to have it not wobbling when you start to drill the tank. Also, in terms of treatment of the bit, if you use this bit to drill acrylic, it will be harder because you'll have to start at an angle, which by the way is the same way you have to drill glass. If you don't use my template tip coming up, you have to start at an angle, bracing your arm till the bit starts to bite, and then you can slowly roll that bit up and drill your hole through. You do that for acrylic, you'll only get a few holes, and then that bit is no good for glass because you've clogged the carbide tip. So for acrylic, and to make your template, you're going to use a regular wood saw hole cutter. Has a pilot hole, which when you do acrylic is nice because you're just going to go in. It's going to hold your saw evenly. It's just like sawing through wood, so drilling an acrylic tank is easy. When I drill a glass tank, I like to drill myself a hole. I leave the other side a little bit open, and I use a wood saw bit to do this. That makes me a template. That way, when I go ahead and drill my hole with the glass bit, my bit fits snugly down into that hole, holds it evenly, and that way I can just drill straight through, get a nice clean hole without needing to start at the angle this way. One last thing on that, a lot of tanks have a painted back on them. If you're drilling a tank with a painted back, you need to make sure and razor off that paint where you're going to start drilling. Even drilling one hole through paint will make that bit much slower for that hole, and it makes it slower for the holes after that. Again, that paint's kind of clogging up that drill bit. So, drilling the hole here, another little secret. You want to have wet surface. It's a wet drill bit, and that will keep your bit in better shape longer, keeps it from overheating, keeps it lubricated as it's drilling through. But you have to figure out a way. So some people will open up a bottle of water, they'll pour a little bit, they'll drill, and then occasionally they'll pour a little bit more. Better solution I found for that, take yourself a nail, poke a hole into that bottle, a small amount of water will squirt out through that hole. I set the bottle there. While I'm doing my drilling, it feeds some water, keeps that bit moist and cool, and I don't have to worry about feeding the water. So that's a little tip there. I hope you've enjoyed this video on hole drilling. If you ever have any aquarium questions, you can always find our social media sources by searching on Discount Aquarium Fish and Reef. You'll find our Instagram, you'll find our Facebook, you'll find our website. You can contact us. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions. We'll be happy to make a video on a particular topic you want to see. Anytime and anything, we really like to help out hobbyists. Take care and have a wonderful day.